Hello everyone, Dark of all Trades here. Now as a person, I know a lot of things. Is it more than the average human? I don't know, but maybe. If I can open up just a little bit to you all, as tough as this is, I am still struggling with what my psychologist explained to me, leading to where my intelligence falls for my age range, at least from his testing and professional opinion. It is tough for me to deal with considering my past. Now, I am certainly not trying to say that I'm smarter or dumber than the next person, just that this is something that I struggle with internally. But thanks for letting me talk about that. Anyway, this leads to what I want to talk about today. That is, what do we know as atheists? Can we understand the world as atheists? Why do we think what we do as atheists? There are so many questions that may not have a direct answer. So for today, I'm going to talk a bit about atheists and what we know or don't know from a couple of short videos. This first one is from a channel called Medical Lake Community Church. After a bit of research, I found that they're located just outside of Spokane, Washington. I wasn't able to find where they state what flavor of Christianity they preach, but they seem to be a bit more fundamental or literal based on their listed views on certain topics. The video is interestingly titled, "Atheists Can't Understand Anything!" Well, it seems that I understand how to upload a video to the YouTubes, so this title is just wrong. But maybe this guy, who's named Doug Thorsvik, and not listed as a pastor, but just listed as an elder. Is this a Mormon congregation? I don't know. But maybe he means that we don't understand anything of a certain topic. I'm not sure, so I'm not going to presume. Anyway, let's find out what Doug here thinks atheists can't understand.
Only heaven silence for an answer.
They fail to attain the true purpose of the mind. The true purpose of the mind is to receive God's revelation, which would guide them in their conduct.
Okay, let me start with the claim that the true purpose of the mind is to receive God's revelation. Initially, you may think that this is a load of something, but this is a bit more interesting of a claim than what it comes off as. Open-minded philosophers and neuroscientists might scratch their heads at, or will more likely outright dismiss, such a tidy conclusion, especially since purpose itself is not something you would necessarily find easily in a brain scan. The mind is quite the marvel of evolution. It is capable of creativity, critical thought, and self-reflection. Limiting its purpose to being a spiritual inbox for some magic entity seems, well, a bit restrictive.
See, fallen humanity, those unbelievers that he's talking about, they have abandoned all restraints in life, is the idea. Societal restraints, spiritual restraints.
Atheists have abandoned all restraints in life? I can't speak for any of you, but I have plenty of restraints. So for example, I don't swear, cuss, curse, whatever you call it. Especially with what I deal with for all of you, that is showing quite the restraint, wouldn't you say? That aside, to say that those without belief in God are effectively indulging in unrestrained hedonism is not only a massively broad overstatement, but it also falls into a familiar trap of assuming that non-believers have no moral compass, which I have talked about at length, and I'm willing to do so if someone isn't sure about it. Interestingly, research shows that secular societies often rank high in measures of well-being and ethical behavior. For example, Denmark and Norway consistently score low in crime rates and high in social welfare. This seems to suggest that you don't need divine surveillance to act decently, just a well-functioning society and respect for human dignity. But let me talk a little bit about the societal restraints claim, ignoring what I just said. Asserting the idea of societal restraints being removed tends to be a coded phrase for moral panic. I will grant, and one would be hard-pressed to argue against the idea, that society now is not the same as it was 2,000, 1,500, 100 years ago, especially from a religious viewpoint. However, are we really witnessing the moral fabric of society unraveling, or is this simply a case of shifting values? Moral panic, much like fashion, has a habit of coming back into style every generation. Yes, some norms are being questioned, but society isn't exactly on the verge of collapse because we're reconsidering outdated social restrictions. In fact, you could argue that these shifts make room for greater empathy, inclusion, and dare I say, progress. I argue that it is not that we've abandoned restraints, but that we've outgrown some of them. Shockingly, more people, especially younger people, are progressive. Humans change over time like pretty much everything else. What worked for society 1,000 years ago may not work anymore, so we move on from many of these traditions.
All they're doing is indulging the self, whatever makes me feel good.
Since he's not saying it directly, I have to say that he seems to imply that the pursuit of what feels good is inherently suspect. But this raises a more philosophical question. Is pleasure itself a vice? Ethical systems like utilitarianism, which advocate for maximizing well-being, would beg to differ. And historically, human pursuits, whether in art, science, or relationships, have been driven by the desire to create, to learn, to connect, and yes, sometimes to enjoy life. None of these are exclusively self-indulgent just because they don't stem from religious doctrine.
Boy, talk about 21st century America. What makes me feel good? Well, it's not right. It doesn't matter. It makes me feel good. I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay, I can't let him get away with this. Who among us is intentionally, knowingly doing wrong things simply because it makes them feel good? Well, sociopaths, I suppose. Most people, whether they follow a religious belief system or not, they don't base their actions on whatever feels good. They act according to personal values, empathy, and societal norms. Having a benefit of feeling good may be part of that, but a lot of things may feel good but violate one's personal code of conduct, so they don't take those actions. But if we're talking about people who do knowingly indulge in wrongdoing, it's worth asking where that behavior is most prevalent. Is it really the non-religious, or could it be those in positions of trust who claim moral authority yet betray that trust for their own gain? We've all seen the headlines, unfortunately. The irony is hard to miss when those who publicly preach restraint and morality are often the ones caught in acts of profound harm to others. Maybe it's time to question whether the problem is truly a lack of belief or a deeper hypocrisy hidden behind the veil of moral leadership.
They've abandoned all restraints. Social restraints, spiritual restraints. Look around us today. Societal restraints that used to hold back evil in our country, they're gone. They're being lifted. They're being removed. They've been abandoned all.
And that's where the video ends. I didn't cut him off. Whoever put this up cut him off. While this elder warns of a society unmoored from spiritual restraint, the real world seems to suggest something quite different. People can and do live ethical, meaningful lives without adhering to a specific religious framework. The mind's true potential doesn't lie in passively receiving revelation to your mental inbox, but in actively exploring the world, critically evaluating beliefs, and building a society based on shared values. Well, I think I have time for another short video, right? Lucky for us, there's another one on this channel called Why Unbelievers Can't Grasp Reality. Oh, good. First he tells us that atheists can't understand anything, and now he's going to explain why we can't grasp reality. Well, at least he's going to explain his reasoning, right? Right? Well, let's see if Elder Thorsvik can make a sound justification.
Since the unsaved do not know God, they can never truly understand the world around them, nor can they understand themselves correctly.
The idea that non-believers can't understand the world or themselves, at least correctly, whatever that actually means, simply because they don't know God is quite the assertion. Let me take a moment to explore that. First, the claim that non-believers are incapable of grasping reality assumes that religious belief, specifically the Christian, and likely the flavor of Christian that Doug here follows, is the only lens through which one can make sense of the world. This conveniently ignores the fact that the scientific method, one of the most powerful tools we have for understanding reality, is used by people of all belief systems. Science doesn't ask whether you believe in God before allowing you to measure the speed of light or understand the laws of gravity. In fact, some of the most groundbreaking discoveries in history, think Einstein or Darwin, came from those who were not traditionally religious. Were their contributions mere illusions, distorted by a darkened understanding?
The way they view the world is distorted by lies. Andrew Lincoln wrote, "A false perspective on reality generates a confusion of desires which can never be satisfied because they have lost touch with what is true, their non-reality. Such desires serve the power of deceit and so are themselves ultimately illusory and contribute to the ruin of the old person."
Here's the quote from Andrew Lincoln and a source for you all. Lincoln's quote about illusory desires feels more like philosophical gatekeeping than an actual argument. The suggestion that only religious desires are true and all others are false presupposes that only one set of values or goals is universally valid. If we look around, desires for knowledge, social justice, love, or self-improvement are hardly illusory. These pursuits have led to incredible progress in human history, and people of all beliefs or lack thereof have contributed to them. To reduce all non-religious pursuits to a form of deceit is simply dismissive, and dare I say, a little bit convenient for those who already assume they have access to all the answers.
The unbeliever cannot view the world correctly. They just cannot, because they've lost grasp of reality. Their minds are darkened. Their thinking is irrational. They cannot think correctly.
This claim that non-believers have darkened minds or cannot think correctly is not only a sweeping generalization, but also a dangerous one. History is absolutely littered with thinkers who were either atheists or agnostics, yet their work revolutionized the way we live today. Figures like Carl Sagan, Bertrand Russell, and Marie Curie, none of whom relied on religious revelation to contribute to humanity, seem to defy this argument about irrational thinking. To dismiss their ability to reason would be, well, rather irrational itself. I also need to point out that reality isn't something one group of people has a monopoly on. Humans are capable of perceiving, interpreting, and questioning the world through many different lenses. Whether through philosophical inquiry, scientific investigation, or personal reflection, the diversity of perspectives only enriches our collective understanding. Claiming that non-believers are inherently incapable of rational thought does more to reveal the limitations of the argument than it does to undermine their intellectual capacity. In the end, the notion that unbelievers are hopelessly out of touch with reality feels more like an attempt to insulate a belief system from criticism. I know, a preacher or elder, whatever his title is, trying to insulate his own belief system from criticism by othering people who disagree as people who can't understand what's actually going on. I was just as shocked as you. Listen, if your worldview can't tolerate other perspectives without declaring them as false, perhaps it's worth questioning the strength of that worldview itself. And that's the end of his videos. So what are the main points Elder D here was making about atheists? Well, here are the main points. What do you think about these points? Do you think Elder Doug Thorsvik has some good points? Or do you think he's missing something quite obvious and comes off as tremendously close-minded? Do you think I summed up the points well, or did I strawman his whole argument? Let me know in the comments below. That's it for this one, so now I turn it over to you. Do you agree with my evaluation of his points here? Maybe you caught something I missed. Perhaps you have a very different take and would have responded completely differently than how I did. I would love to see your take on the videos I responded to. Though if you've received personal enjoyment from this video, hit that like button, regardless of your spiritual restraints, whatever that means. Though if you like your mind literally darkened, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to help view the world correctly. A special thanks goes out to my patrons, Calamitous Anima, Sora, Long-Haired Lefty, Musical Ocelot, Ooga Booga Luga, Anonymous Netizen, Angel, Tarek Alkasab, Jamminbomb, Kai Henningsen, and Triple Towel. You are all the aspects of my society that I will never ignore. Thank you. Though, if you'd like to help fulfill my rational desires, you can join them for as low as $1 a month at patreon.com/darkofalltrades. Or maybe that isn't true. I don't know. I'm sure that Elder Doug Thorsvik wouldn't think so. Well, nuts to you. And out of sheer curiosity, I looked up what his name means. Doug comes from the Scottish Gaelic meaning Black River or Dark Waters. As for his last name, it isn't exactly clear, but I'm going to guess that Thors delivers from the god Thor. The suffix Vik, often found in the term Viking, means bay or inlet. So basically, this guy's name is essentially Dark Waters of Thor's Bay. And you know what? This guy doesn't deserve such a cool and poetic name. I think I'm going to refer to him as Elder Sweaterbest if I ever come back to this. Someone remind me. Well, maybe I won't be that mean. We'll just have to see. Thanks for checking me out today. And as always, keep learning.
So that's why my religion